All right, this is Dan Meehan for Fight News Australia, and apologies in advance for my croaky voice. I've been struggling with bronchitis all week, but the show must go on. And today's guest, as you can see, is the Springbok Justin Van Heerden, who originally stepped in on short notice to challenge Eternal Featherweight champion Jack Jenkins in the main event of Eternal MMA 60 on June 5th. We actually had a great interview last week where we talked about the Jenkins matchup and everything surrounding that, but COVID has reared its ugly head again over here in Victoria, and Jenkins can't travel to Perth. So Justin now takes on Jiu-Jitsu black belt Rod Costa in the co-main event. So this is actually take two for us. So Justin was gracious enough to come back on and re-record the interview. So Justin, thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always happy to have a chat.
No worries at all. Now, you're obviously proudly of South African heritage. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you found your way to Australia?
Yeah, so was born in Johannesburg in South Africa. Did a brief stint over in America for like a couple of years when I was like super young. So lived in Atlanta for a bit, and then we moved back to South Africa. And then in like 2006, 2007, we made the trek to Australia and sort of moved here and became based here. So I've been in Australia for a while now. Yeah, and then that's sort of how everything kind of came about. My parents just decided that Australia was going to be the destination, and we made the trek over and made our home here.
Right, and how did you get started in MMA?
As I sort of, I started from a young age doing sort of very different sort of sports, like anything you can think of, cricket, rugby, soccer, athletics, gymnastics, karate, for a brief stint as well, and then started wrestling at a very young age. And I kind of, was sort of always sort of active with that sort of thing. And then when I moved to Australia, I kind of initially, didn't really get stuck into any combat sport initially. I kind of just played more of the sort of generic sports, like rugby league, rugby union, and kind of just basketball, soccer, kind of just stayed active, did all those sort of things. But then once I really started getting sort of into MMA, like really watching it and sort of getting stuck into the sport and that sort of side of things, I started getting curious about it. And I was like, okay, well, is there somewhere that I could potentially train and, see what it's like? And then, in 2014 or late 2013, early 2014, I started training at an MMA gym up in Mackay in North Queensland, and started jiu-jitsu, initially started jiu-jitsu, and I was just doing jiu-jitsu for a bit, and then started doing some of the MMA training, and quickly found that the wrestling sort of stuff, translated quite well to both. And at that stage, I hadn't even thought about, competing or fighting or anything. It was just kind of like cool to be training in the sport that I started watching and started getting, so invested in. And then I was training for about 6 months, and my coach at the time, David Garnham, he was overseas at the time with his family. It was like around March, I think, or mid-Feb, sort of March of that year, 2014. And he called me up and was like, hey, someone's, looking for a matchup for someone in March in a week's time. Do you want to jump in and have your first sort of amateur fight? And I was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So, flew down to Brisbane, had my first fight on a promotion that was then sort of doing a fair few shows after Shock MMA. So I had my first fight, didn't know what to expect, got in there, it was all crazy, had, the nerves, had to, you're cutting weight for the first time, all that sort of whole process. And it was all crazy and a surreal experience. I ended up winning that fight with a mounted triangle in the third round. And then after that, it was just hooked after I had that first fight. And I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. This is like what I want to make a career and life out of, have that as the thing I'm passionate about. And once I got that sort of first fight in and that bug kind of bit me, it was just sort of nonstop from there.
Right, and so you're training at Freestyle Fighting Gym these days under Joe Lopez, who's probably best known as the coach of UFC champion Alexander Volkanovski. How did that move come about, and what sort of impact has that had on you?
So that came about sort of in the last, sort of in February of this year, it was sort of I guess the ball started rolling, and that the whole situation started to come together. I was sort of I was based in Brisbane at the time, training at Southside MMA under Paul Stollier, and I'd almost felt like I plateaued out at where I was. I was I felt like I'd hit a wall almost, in a sense, like there was some missing pieces that I needed to find to be able to like realize the potential that I know I have and be in a sort of environment where I know I can become a world champion. So I then, I was talking to Alex and Joe, and sort of, putting the feelers out to be like, oh, okay, potentially coming down here and training down here. And then Alex made the suggestion of me coming and joining for the second Holloway camp, and participating in that. So I was sort of looking at doing that potentially. And then obviously COVID restrictions stopped travel to New South Wales, and Queensland were up in their restrictions again too. So it kind of, put that to bed. And then I was still kind of like, oh, okay, I'll kind of touch base, see if I can come down and check out the gym, or maybe I should just move down. I don't know. It was a bit all over the place. And then they ended up having like trials to join their fight team on the 5th and 6th of February, I believe it was, or the 6th and 7th, around there. So I came down for those couple of days, flew down, trained, got stuck in for the trials, met everyone, got the feel for the gym, got a feel for the area. Joe put us through a grueling 2 days. It was pretty hectic to see everyone sort of get stuck in, and it was a good group of people that came down. It was awesome. And when the second day, we did we did some sparring on the second day. So immediately, you're thrown in there, you're sharing the mats with people like Josh Kulabau, Trent Girdham, Colby Thickness, Alex himself as well. Jamie Malaki, Blake Donnelly, guys like that. Who are also high level guys. So you got to do that, and then they kind of assessed us in all these different areas. And then it was a week later, on like the Friday, they got in touch and were like, we want to offer you a spot to join our team, and we'd love to have you. So I was kind of like, okay, well, that's really awesome. Like so that was quite a good feeling to get that kind of nod of approval from someone like Joe Lopez, from someone like Alex, for them to go, okay, we think you'll be a great addition to our team, and we'd love to have you. Because I guess it's with guys that, people like that, they want people who are going to get stuck in, do the work, who are going to be good training partners, who are going to help out in and around the gym. And, they don't want people who are going to waste their time, which is understandable, So to have them go, okay, we want you here, we want you to join the team was a good feeling. But initially I was still kind of like, oh, okay, well, can I do this? Am I going to be able to just pack up my family and go to New South Wales? And then, I discussed it with my partner, Sarah, and we were just like, okay, let's do it. And she was, a big push in that direction of going, this is what you want to do. This is what you're passionate about. Let's do it right. Let's get you in the right place where you can, excel towards your goal. And, so then we kind of just did that. We packed up, and it was like a couple of weeks after that, we jumped in the car and drove down. It took about 2-3 days to get down. 2,000 kilometers later, just kind of got here. Didn't really have, the only thing that was certain was, as soon as I get down here, I'll be training straight away. And I was already in camp to fight on Eternal at the end of Jan. That got moved, and then I was scheduled to fight on Eternal already. So I was in camp myself. The boys were in camp for the Ortega fight and their respective fights. So it was pretty much, that was the only certainty. As far as everything else, outside of the gym, it was all up in the air, like where you're going to live, all that sort of stuff. My partner's trying to sort out her university, trying to find somewhere stable and safe, and for my daughter to be, so that we're not kind of like chopping and changing everything every 5 seconds. So yeah, it all ended up coming together. It was very sort of stressful, especially for my partner. She had to kind of, do so much on the outside of supporting me and backing me to like be here and train, and, making that move. There was a lot of slack that she picked up across the board to try and make it all come together so that we could be here and could be settled and stable. So I think I'm thankful for that, because obviously without that kind of push and support from her, I can't confidently say that I would have been able to go, okay, we're packing up and we're moving. You know, that's a pretty big thing to do. You know, her family lives up in North Queensland. My family lives up in North Queensland. You know, we just had a baby. There were so many things that happened, as I touched on, you know, when we spoke last week. You know, her mum recently passed away. So there was all these things that are like life-changing events that have already happened. And then you're throwing in moving to another state on top of that. So for me to be able to go, okay, I need to make sure that I'm doing everything I need to do, because otherwise that'll be a slap in the face, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy process, but, you know, now I've been here for a couple months now. I feel like I've been at the, you know, part of the freestyle team for years. You know, everyone's made me feel super welcome. Yeah, so it's just been obviously super crazy, but like I look at the last couple of months, and as crazy as it's been, and the stresses that there's been outside of the gym, yeah, it's all crazy to see where it is now, and how it's all coming together.
Definitely. And you found your way back into the cage just 3 weeks ago at Eternal 59. It was a pretty grueling contest against a tough opponent in Michael Barber. How did you pull up after that one?
Yeah, it was I mean, obviously, yeah, the fight, you know, kind of went perfectly for myself. It all come together. The game plan that we adopted for the fight, you know, the initial game plan for the fight was vastly different to how the fight itself went, based on adjustments that I made once I kind of got in there and felt what, you know, what he was like, you know, felt how strong he was, saw, you know, kind of figured out his awareness when it came to those grappling and wrestling exchanges. And I realized that there was a big disadvantage in that column for him. So it was a no-brainer almost to pursue that line, to find a path to victory with the ability to kind of look for the finish but not have to chase it, you know. Michael's obviously a tough dude and wouldn't quit. I believe in a previous fight that he had, he actually lost a testicle, or part of a testicle. I found that out after the fight, so it was no surprise to me that he didn't quit or didn't give, you know, look for a way out in the fight, even though he was pretty much on the back foot and didn't have an answer for the 3 rounds for the wrestling and the grappling that I presented him with. So yeah, we always knew it was going to be a crazy fight, and that if I, you know, got in there and threw my game plan to the wind and was like, okay, let's pursue a action, you know, a line of action in the area where he's got has a strength. It was always going to be a rough night in the office. He hits hard. He likes to brawl. He's very game. He obviously doesn't quit. So it was pretty much like, okay, let's take that off the table. So I came back to the corner after that first round, and I was just like, all right, well, I feel like levels above in the wrestling and the grappling right now, and I don't think there's much of an answer he has for me. So it was pretty much simple, like I said, to just continue on that path. So yeah, it was a good fight for me. You know, went my way. Didn't cop any damage or any knocks or anything. So came out unscathed. So that kind of obviously factors into the decision of taking the fight with Jack on 3 weeks' notice to fight for a title. I mean, the work we do at Freestyle and the stuff that we're doing, like, you know, my fitness, my ability to get in there and fight 5 rounds wasn't ever going to be like, oh, do I need more time to do that? You know, like I'm ready for that regardless. I was ready for that when I fought Michael. So that wasn't as much of a factor. It was more so the biggest factors for me was no injuries. And then, you know, I sit down with my partner and I go, what do you think? And we talk about it, because, you know, we're a team and I'm here where I am now because of her. She's such a crucial part of that as well. So I can't just sit here and go, okay, yeah, I'm going to fight this person and that's what's happening. So, you know, it was a discussion with her, it was a discussion with Joe. And initially we didn't really look at taking the fight because Joe was still overseas with filming the Tough series with Alex and Colby. So initially he was like, oh, okay, let's not do it. Let's wait. Maybe we can tee it up for July, or maybe we can find another fight after that, and we'll see how we go. And then it was like a day or two later, or a couple of days later, Cam called me and was like, hey, you know, we're pretty keen to get this fight going with, you know, with the hype that everything happened with Jack and I, you know, after my fight on the last Eternal. We kind of, you know, obviously we shared some words. It was a bit of hype that built up very quickly. Everyone was like, oh, this is the fight we want to see. And then yeah, so it initially didn't come together, but then we were able to sort of work some stuff out and go, okay, let's make the fight happen. And obviously the fight got booked, and that's been the focus, and the prep has been obviously for Jack, and then now, you know, obviously COVID restrictions pop up, that all changes a few things. They offered us Rod Costa. I spoke to Joe about it. I was like, you know, what do you think? They're offering us Rod Costa's replacement. He's more than willing to jump in and take the fight. So what do you think? And Joe was pretty much like, with no hesitation, was like, okay, let's do it. You know, it's a good fight for us. Rod's obviously very dangerous. He's very, very, obviously he's got the very, very good grappling credentials. You know, you can't knock that. I think he's a multiple-time world medalist. Obviously a very experienced black belt. And he looked really good in his last fight against Khan as well. So, you know, it's an exciting fight for me. He's game. He's another person that likes to fight. Obviously, that comes from him taking the fight at short notice, you know, willing to jump in like that. He's obviously someone who's game and wants to fight, and he's very dangerous. So it's exciting for me. You know, I was preparing for someone like Jack and preparing for 5 rounds. So it's kind of flipped now. Now I'm fighting a very experienced BJJ black belt whose striking looked like it's improved tremendously. If you look at that last fight, I thought it was a very tightly contested fight. So, you know, that excites me. It's just making a few changes, making a few adjustments, but ultimately, you know, the goal's the same. I just got to go in there and do what I know I can do, and utilize the improvements I've made at my time at Freestyle already, and, you know, kind of showcase my abilities and just do that. And obviously, whilst trying to implement that, you know, still being on guard, still, you know, being patient, not looking for those little rush, you know, sort of things, whether it's in the grappling, on the striking, or in the wrestling, because, you know, Rod's dangerous. You've seen him snap submissions on people from out of nowhere. You know, so you kind of always have to be on guard. And, you know, I feel like much the same as the fight with Jack. It's kind of like, if you make a mistake, you could be in lots of trouble, you know, both ways, vice versa. So, you know, that's kind of exciting. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm interested to see the approach that Rod takes for the fight as well, you know. So it's all sort of piqued my curiosity a bit, but at the end of the day, I've just got to get in there and do what I do, and I'm sure the result will play out in my favor.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, with as you alluded to there, and Rod looked pretty good in his in what was a losing effort, but a controversial decision maybe with Khan Offley last time out. The fight with Offley sort of turned into a little bit of a kickboxing match, and I sort of wondered, with you guys both sort of coming from a grappling background, do you think your fight might go down a similar road?
I mean, generally, when you look at it on paper, when you see two guys that have, you know, quite a good grappling sort of pedigree or whatever, that generally is how it goes. It sometimes can just shape up to be like a stand-up fight, because neither guy looks to engage in the grappling, because neither guy wants to put themselves in a position where that can be a factor that could end the fight, I guess. So it ends up being that. But I mean, I certainly won't be surprised if that's how it turns out. But at the same time, you know, I'm ready to get in there and have an MMA fight. Like, I know at some point there's going to be some wrestling exchanges, there's going to be some clinching, there's going to be some grappling. And the biggest thing is, it's obviously you have the respect for those your opponent in those areas, especially like in the grappling side of things, as we touched on. His grappling's very, very good. But at the same time, you know, you've just got to, the way I look at it is, you just got to be ready for anything. I mean, if I walk into that cage and think that I'm just going to have a stand-up fight just because I like to grapple and wrestle, and that's something that I have in my back pocket, and he certainly likes to grapple, you know, and that's what he has in his back pocket. If I just think that I'm going to walk in there and have a stand-up fight, next thing I'm taken down, I'm on my back, he's attached to me trying to choke me or something, you know, that you're kind of setting yourself up for failure if you're not ready for anything. But yeah, I can, like I sort of said, I can see on paper that that's how it would shape up, that it could be just a straight up kickboxing fight where we just get in there and punch each other till we don't want to be punched no more.
And with only a week or so sort of left to prepare since the the announcement of Costa being the late replacement. Like, how disruptive is it having to switch to a clear specialist like Costa from a sort of a well-rounded opponent?
It's not really frustrating. It's more so, it's kind of just like you just have to make those little adjustments mentally for yourself more than anything. It's not so much about, oh, okay, I've got to immediately change what I'm doing and everything like that. It's not so much that. It's just mentally you got to make those adjustments and go, okay, this is who I'm fighting now. I'm not fighting, Jack, who I was preparing for. So you've just got to, like, I guess, give yourself that reality check to go, okay, if I approach this fight like I would approach the fight with Jack, that might not necessarily be the best course of action, or might not work, or it might. But I just need to. The thing for me was just to go, okay, I'm fighting Rod Costa. That's the focus now. I need to give him the full attention and full respect, as I would with any person that I'm about to step in there with. So, yeah, it was just a quick sort of, I guess, 10-minute kind of mental sort of reality check for myself, and then go, okay, this is what's happening now. And then it was just, a no-brainer to just continue with the work that we're doing and just get in and get stuck in and continue to do the work. So, like today, it's Friday. It's Friday, a week out from the fight. In a week's time, I'll be weighing in, and then the next night we'd be fighting. So tonight will be sort of today is sort of like my last hard day of the camp. And then, the rest of it's just the simple stuff, making sure that you're moving around, trimming off that last bit of weight, staying healthy, making sure that, the body cops a bit of recovery, if you did have any sort of little things bugging you, just keeping it light and tight and ready to go for fight week when it's time to have fun.
And how far in advance do you head over to Perth?
So I'm going to be heading over a day before the weigh-ins. I believe I get there on the Thursday. Yeah, so which is quite good. I'm not really a fan of traveling on the day of the weigh-ins, especially once you've cut weight and stuff like that, because generally if you're going to travel on the day of the weigh-ins, you more than likely cut your weight the night before. You're dehydrated for longer. It's just, and then when you're traveling in a plane, like, you retain water a bit more. So even if you did half your cut and we're like, okay, I'll fly over and then I'll do the rest when you get there, it makes it so much harder. Obviously, if you look at like Geordie, the fight dietitian, all the stuff that he's constantly putting out there, the research and the knowledge and stuff like that, it makes sense. There's reasons why these things are like that. So for me to fly over on the Thursday is perfect, because I'll get there, I can get settled in, and I'm already there, so that I can be ready to go on the weigh-in day, so I can cut weight with enough time that I'm on weight, but I'm not dehydrated for a long period of time. So I can just pretty much time it out that I'm not trying to arrive at an airport, get to a hotel, then I'm trying to get to somewhere where I need to cut weight, then I'm trying to cut weight, then I'm trying to get to, then it becomes like too much of a mental stress and as well. So yeah, the Thursday is when I'll be getting there, and then that'll be pretty much when we do that sort of last sort of part of the annoying part, which is obviously cutting weight. But then after that, it's easy days, and we get in there and have fun.
And you alluded to earlier sort of the hype that was sort of building up surrounding the Jenkins fight, and we've talked about this before. But how disappointing was that? Was that sort of scratch? And is that sort of a fight that you're interested in revisiting down the track?
Yeah, obviously I was mega keen to get in there and share the cage with Jack. As I touched on, he's a high caliber opponent. He's very well rounded, and he's obviously dangerous. So that sort of stuff excites me. And I'm constantly looking for those challenges. I've done that in my weight class. I've done that out of my weight class. I like to fight, and I want to test myself. And I don't look at it like, oh, no, I probably shouldn't do that. I'm putting myself at risk here. I could potentially lose. I don't have that mentality. I just feel like, you got to be out there I've got to be out there and testing myself. And if I want to do something, then I'm going to do it. So obviously I was a bit bummed that the fight with Jack got scrapped, but I'm also understanding of the situation. Like, I understand that, it's the stuff, the restrictions with COVID, and it is what it is. And at the end of the day, people have to stay safe, and everyone's got families, everyone's got friends, everyone's got to, kind of look out for each other. And when those things happen, we just got to, accept it and deal with it. So, it wasn't a case of like some other, reason. It'd be different if it was like, say, for example, they called me and they're like, oh, he's out of the fight, he's injured or something. And then, maybe a week later, he's doing like a grappling comp or some shit. Then I'd be like, wait, what's going on? And that'd be a bit different. But he and I spoke actually, after they called me and were like, he's out of the fight. He spoke to me and was like, he was pretty bummed about it as well himself, obviously. So that was obviously shows that, he was he did the respectful thing in messaging me himself to be like, hey man, apologies for the situation, even though it's completely out of his hands. And there was that consideration from my part to be like, okay, well, that's the fight that I was scheduled for. And do I knock back a replacement opponent and kind of just wait and see what happens? Or, then what's the sort of next process? And do I just wait it out? So I guess me accepting a fight with Rod kind of puts the fight with Jack in a kind of no man's land at the moment, because obviously, I've got to go out there and perform and get the result. I can't look past, this fight with him. I can't be like, oh yeah, I'm going to fight Rod and let's start looking at doing this fight with Jack or whatever. I've got to just focus on that. And once that fight's, this fight is sort of out of the way and hopefully I get the result that I'm looking for, then potentially we can look at that and see if we can move some things around and make the fight happen with Jack. Obviously he's keen for that fight. I'm keen for that fight. A lot of, Australian MMA fans are keen for that fight. Cam and Ben, they're keen for that fight. So, but in saying that, his original opponent will be healed as well now. So, it's like, it's not my job to figure that out. Obviously I can make my case for a fight. And I feel like if I go out, perform against Rod, especially if I have a great performance and I do what I do and I get the win, I kind of, put myself as the only person that's there for Jack to fight for his next title defense, in a sense. That's sort of where I see things being. Not that, I'd go out of my way if they were like, oh, okay, we're going to book Jack Jenkins to fight Muhammad Alavi. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, that's bullshit, it should be me. If it comes my way, it comes my way. If we do it, we get to do it. If we don't get to do it, we don't get to do it. At the end of the day, we're all chasing the same things. So I want to see people, regardless of whether I fight them or not, I want to see people, get to where they want to get to, because it just rises everyone up at the same time.
Yep. And looking further afield, I can see from speaking to you and obviously the moves that you've made this year that you're all in on your MMA career. Like, what's the goal long term? What is it that keeps you on the grind every day?
For me, it's I want to be a world champion. I don't want I want to be a world champion. I don't want to. Everyone, you see a lot of the time, and it's spoken about a lot. People are like, they get that call up to fight, whether it's in the UFC or Bellator or something like that, and there's sort of like a sense of, oh, I've done it. No, that's day one. That's day one of your new job. I'm not just looking to get a contract with the UFC and then, okay, I've made it. I want to be a world champion. I trained with a world champion. I see the work that he's doing. I see the work that we're doing. I see the stuff that Joe puts into us to coaching us and everything like that. I want to be a world champion. I'm going to be a world champion. So that's my goal. But ultimately, my bigger goal than just being the world champion is I want to use my passion, use my abilities as a mixed martial artist to be able to provide a life for my partner and my family, that's going to be just an incredible thing, and not have to, we're using something that I'm so passionate about and that I love so much, to be able to, give the two people that are the most important people in my life, the life that they want and the life that they deserve. you know, I want to also at the same point be able to be in a position where I'm a world champion in the sport, and I'm using my platform to help other people and help, you know, follow in those footsteps, like you see with guys like Dustin Poirier. And that, you know, I feel like if you're in a position where you get to that point, you should use that to give back in a sense as well. So, I mean, those are my three biggest goals: would be to be a world champion, to help people out who need it, and to be able to just provide a great life for my family.
Right. And how far off do you feel like a call up to the big leagues might be? Like, how many sort of wins do you feel like you need to string together, or how far off do you reckon it might be?
Well, when I was sort of looking at this fight with Jack, when I got booked to fight Jack, I was thinking about it. I wasn't obviously just focused on the fight. Like, that's my focus. That was my focus. But it's hard not to consider the other factors that are surrounding it. Obviously, if I go out there, if this fight came together how it was meant to, I go out there, I fight Jack, I beat Jack. He's on a win streak. He's the current Eternal champion. Eternal's easily the premier promotion in Australia, and the biggest platform for professional mixed martial artists at the moment. It is what it is. So I knew that if I went out there and performed against him and won, I would put myself in a really good spot, because I would be my second Australian title. I'd be on a 3-5 win streak. My record would improve to 8-4. I'd be the number one featherweight in the country. So it would have put me in a good spot for a possible, you know, call up straight to the UFC or the Contender Series potentially. But in saying that, like I said, that's not really something that I was overly focusing on. I mean, as I'm realistic, I can recognize that's a possibility. But as I said, you know, I just got to take it day by day. I mean, where I'm at now, I've just got to perform and keep doing what I'm doing. You know, I'm on a 2-fight win streak, 2 dominant performances. If I keep that up, I know that I'll get to where I want to be and potentially get there within this year. So, I mean, obviously the way the year started with, you know, my fight getting cancelled, with me trying to take a gamble on fighting at bantamweight on very short notice, and my fight getting pushed back with Michael like so many times, and then to have that finally happen, I feel like my year is getting underway now. So, you know, I wanted to have 4 fights this year at least, and I believe regardless, I'm still going to be able to do that. If not, potentially 5 fights, who knows? So yeah, we'll see how it comes together. But I feel like if I just keep winning and put in the performances that I know I can put in, it's a no-brainer for me that the phone's going to ring and I'm going to be fighting alongside my teammate in the biggest organization in the world.
Yeah. And before I let you go, do you have any sponsors or anyone you'd like to shout out? I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I'll obviously want to give a big shout out to the guys from CMBT. They're just, you know, it's not so much that obviously they have great products that they provide for athletes, especially combat athletes, but the 2 guys behind it, you know, Miles and Sal, they're just genuinely good guys, you know, they're just genuinely nice guys that are always looking to help people out and, you know, make that extra effort to look after people, not just, you know, not just their athletes and the people in that sort of capacity, you know, within their community and just in general. So obviously, anytime I can give those guys a good plug, I'm going to do that. And the guys from Enhanced as well, you know, those CBD products that they do and the stuff that they're doing, you know, it's helping, and I'm seeing so many more athletes utilize that, amateurs, pros, everything like that, and people not necessarily just combat sport athletes, which excites me, because you want to see people pursue their sport and pursue what they want to do and have all the tools available to be able to do that. And if those things, you know, help you, then it's incredible. Like I stand by those guys, you know, and their products that they have. It's been such a benefit to me in my journey. So I can only imagine how much it's helping some other people as well. Yeah, so those guys, you know, the guys from CBT, the guys from Enhance, they're just incredible, and I'm thankful to have them in my journey.
Perfect. Well, Justin, thank you so much for coming back on, and all the best at Eternal 60.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I look forward to putting on a show.